All right. So I would argue that a good relationship is between two people who want each other rather than need each other. Um, but with this good relationship, right, which is just a theory of mine, um, there's this vulnerability that is present. Um, a relationship that has dependency on one end or mutual dependency is miserable and safe, while this so-called good relationship brings with it a vulnerability, because the person who the person who doesn't or who doesn't need you, could just leave at any time. Um, and so there's this vulnerability that is present within a good relationship. Um, so let's begin with faith. Faith is a very interesting and fascinating thing to me because when I say the word faith, it has a modern meaning to it, right? And but I want you to try to try to think of this word faith without its modern meaning, right? And if you do that, then you would realize that without doubt, there is no faith. That in the original meaning of the word faith, rather than the modern meaning, um, there is doubt present, right? Because if there is no doubt, then all you have is certitude, right? That's all you have. You have certitude. Um, and so that's why the modern meaning of this word faith is very interesting, because the modern meaning of faith is when you think of the word faith, you think of a set of doctrines or dogmas, right? What is your faith? What is your set of doctrines? What is your set of dogmas? Um, it's pathetic out there when it's pathetic when I see men trying to argue for the existence of God. Um, because we come across a lot of the modern problems, right? And a lot of the modern problems, I think, arise from the the beginnings of the rational thinkers like Aquinas. He brings in Aristotle, and then the rise of science, right? With the rise of science and the rise of reason, there's a lot of doubt out there that starts to creep in for the existence of God. And so what these theists are doing is that they are trying to prove with certitude that God exists. Right? In other words, by the tyranny of definitions, these are men without faith. They have no faith. Um, they are like scared little children that are deathly afraid of doubt. And they don't want to appear uncool in all of the intellectual circles that exist, right? Um, and so they're desperately trying to prove with math and reason that God does exist. Um, because I mean, there's a problem there, right? If God does exist, he he doesn't get involved in in a way that you can see with your senses. Um, Now, I mean, for me, I would um, I would argue that all of this is pretty easily solved if you say that God is love, right? Because every time that you are loving, you are having a relationship with God. Every time you are brave, God is bravery. You are having a relationship with God. Wise, patient, whatever any of the other virtues are. I don't know. But, etc. and so forth. But, I mean, we can easily look at our children, right? If you have a child and you're wise and rational, um, rather than just following the parental customs of our day, you would want your child to be strong enough to survive in this world and face the challenges that are presented to them, right? Um, and you're less proud of them if they're dependent on you, right? Um, that's why inheritance laws are blasphemous. But anyways, um, but yeah, no, you're proud of them. Like think about watching a story, right? And you're watching a story and the characters are struggling, you know. Um, like you can think of Dragon Ball Z and Goku struggling to become a strong man. And it's during those struggles that you have the most admiration. Like your admiration for these characters are just like through the roof, right? To the moon. Um, that's how I would argue the relationship with God is. Like we are the stories that heaven watches. We are the Netflix of heaven. And when you're struggling, um, that is when the heavens, the other side of the veil, whatever it is, that's when they admire you, just like we admire characters that we watch, who are loving, brave, wise, whatever, patient, and whatever the other virtues are. Um, it's the same way, right? Um, so that's why you have this one prayer called "Footsteps in the Sand," and God's carrying you, and you're this dependent person, and this prayer is a terrible prayer. Yeah, no, it's these again, these theists are like scared little children. Um, you have many of these theists that believe in the so-called traditional family, right, with the woman at home and yada yada yada. Well, this so-called traditional family is it's not historically accurate, right? Because this so-called traditional family start begins with the industrial age, right? Before the industrial age, um, you had the peasants, right? And the peasants were more self-sufficient rather than dependent on the lords, as in serfdom. Um, I don't consider, I'm making a distinction between serfs and peasants. Um, and the modern day corporate serfs, right? Like we all are. And but when people were more self-sufficient, it's like the woman would be making the clothes or uh, gardening, or maybe the man would go out there and garden while the woman did some other thing. This so-called traditional family is not traditional. The tradition, the modern traditional family begins with this industrial age and the rise of serfdom under anti-free market corporations. And so this woman becomes this dependent creature, right? And you have all these manly traditional men who are in reality scared little boys. That's what they are. They're scared little boys that want their woman to be dependent upon them. right? And what a boring story. In fact, not just that story, but all the stories nowadays. Like, if you were on the other side of the veil, there, the stories of today are boring, tragic, and sad. And that's because that's because the theists have no faith.